So let's just start the official part. So, hello everyone, and welcome so much for joining us today for our webinar, SANDI Best Practices for Driver Readiness, Confidence and Independence. My name is Jan Schlueter, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of Neurodiverse Technologies. We are very pleased to welcome professionals from driving schools, autism organizations, occupational therapy, driver rehabilitation programs, schools, universities, vocational rehabilitation providers, and other organizations supporting neurodiverse individuals on their journey toward greater independence. Today's session will be focused on a very important question. How can we help autistic learners and individuals with elevated driving anxiety build confidence and readiness before they ever enter real traffic? To help us explore that question, I'm delighted to introduce Rich Greene from ASD Drive Ready, the first official SANDI driver training center in Florida. Rich brings practical real-world experiences using SANDI with learners and families. Today, he will share his approach, the lessons he has learned, and best practices for using simulation to support driver readiness, confidence, and independence. Rich, thank you very much for being with us and for sharing your experience. Before we begin, I would like also to mention that we will have time for questions at the end of the presentation. Please feel free to enter your questions into the Q&A or chat throughout the webinar. I will collect and organize them, and during the Q&A portion, I will channel those questions and Rich ask him kindly to respond. We will do our best to cover as many questions as possible. And with that, Rich, I'm pleased to hand the session over to you.
Thanks, Jan. I really appreciate that. Let me go ahead and share screen again here. As Jan mentioned, my name is Rich Greene. I own ASD Drive Ready. I started using virtual reality training to supplement our driver education program back in 2019 when I owned Columbia River Driver Education in Oregon. And my background in driver education, I served as a member of the Oregon Governor's Driver Education Advisory Committee. I'm currently a member of the ATSIA Florida Board. I just got back from the ATSIA National Convention recently. And I just want to, level set here that this presentation isn't about just buying another piece of software or doing something like that. What I really want to do is talk about how to set up a real simulator service that you can provide to your clients. Now, just to let you know about ASD Drive Ready, we are a 100% simulation-based service model. We don't do any in-car instruction. We don't do any classroom. We just do simulation. And so far in 2026, we've evaluated 96 students. We've performed 334 training sessions, and we've recently expanded to our 4th service area. We're about to add a 5th service area. So by service area in Florida, they have what's called the Center for Autism-Related Disabilities. It's associated with the major universities in the state. UF has 2, Gainesville and Jacksonville. We're in both of those. Florida State University has the Panhandle area. We're there. But by far, our largest area is University of Central Florida, which covers the Orlando region. And like I said, we're in all 4 of those areas doing evaluations and sessions. And the one thing I'd like to point out is that the numbers here may not look as large as, they may not look impressive at a quick glance when you think about it. But I'd just like to say that until recently, I've been a one-man operation, traveling to the different places and going to conferences and stuff like that. And we just recently hired a full-time person for the Orlando region. And so we expect to see those numbers grow quite a bit as we continue to to move forward and look at trying to help more students. But for those of you who are wondering whether or not the simulator, can add to your business, I'm just here to say it can be a business on its own. Not only can it add, but it can support itself. One thing I do like to point out is that the simulator, it's a bridge and it's not the goal, right? We have to keep in mind as instructors uh, that the purpose of simulation is to increase readiness and to expand readiness to people who wouldn't necessarily be allowed, or either the in-car experience, they wouldn't be allowed to do it, or it just wouldn't be something that they would be comfortable doing. But by using virtual reality and software such as Sandy, we can now expand the pool of people that we can move to in-car training. Previously, the best known model would be, someone with on the spectrum. They would get classroom instruction. Maybe they would try to get in-car instruction. But if they got overloaded, if they, if it just was too much for them, then they'd be, told you just can't do this. Or they would go to someone who's, maybe a certified driver rehabilitation specialist who could give them a processing test, where they would maybe put them in the passenger seat, something like that, have them drive and try and measure how well they could process the information involved in driving. Then they would grade that. But the problem with that test is that when you say yes to driving, it has to mean yes. You can't say, you're pretty close, go ahead and give it a try, because the risk is too great. And so using simulators as a bridge and letting people train in actual driving situations expands the pool of people that may be able to get to the car. And so it's it's a huge benefit. Now, one of the things that I want to say, though, is that the simulator and the software, they're a tool. They're not the business, though, right? So to make a business, you need to have all of these things together. I think you have to have a tool with the right equipment, but you also have to have a skilled instructor, right? That is going to know how to use that tool. You need to have a good path. So you have to figure out what your path of moving the client along is going to be. And then you really need to be part of a community. And you need to have that trusted referral ecosystem that for us with ASD Drive Ready, it has been those Center for Autism Related Disabilities and different autism organizations in Florida have taken a look at what we do, taken a look at how we do things, and they've decided that we're a credible partner, and so they're willing to to go out into the community and kind of cheerlead for us. And so that helps give us a constant client base that's always coming to us. And so it takes all of these things, though, to really have a business model. And if you just had any one of these, I'm not sure how successful the program would be. Certainly not for us. It wouldn't be that successful. Now, I did mention having the tool and the appropriate equipment. And one of the things that I'd like to do is kind of talk about that equipment. And in my role, both in Oregon and with ATSIA, whenever I meet someone who owns a driver education business, the first thing they want to talk to me about is their cars. When I ask them about their business, oh, we got the best cars. We have we have a new fleet of vehicles. They'll talk about the cameras that they've got inside the cars, the different safety equipment in the cars. A lot of them will they'll grab their phone and they'll show me, look at this. I can log into all of my cars right from here from my phone, and I can see inside the car. I can see outside the car. I can look at the routes that they've done. They talk about how much stuff they've put in their car, which I think is fantastic. But then when I talk to someone who calls me about, the using a simulator, putting a simulator as part of their business, the question I get frequently is, so what's the minimum amount of equipment that I need to have to make the software work? So, the reason that they go overboard on the car is because they understand that the car speaks to their professionalism. And if someone called you and said, hey, what's the minimum product that I need to start up a driver education school in Florida? I could tell them, well, you could go to Facebook Marketplace and buy, a $1,000 car, slap a student driver magnet on the side of it, put a used instructor brake that you bought off eBay in it, and, and go to town. That's the minimum viable equipment. So, but if they took that equipment and went out in in the neighborhood, how much credibility would they have with the parents out there? I think the same thing's true when it comes to our simulation and our setup, right? So and I'm not saying that to chastise anybody, or it's just make sure that where you set your equipment up when you're bringing people in gives the message that you want delivered. Are you doing your training in what used to be a small storage closet? What kind of customer experience are you creating? How much documentation do you have for your instructors to go through and teach the program? What kind of instructor presence do you have? Those are the kind of things that I think are really important for you to think about when it goes to, what kind of setup you should have or what you're doing. Now you'll notice that I like to use virtual reality training. That's what we use exclusively is virtual reality. And I would say that it's important to talk about the differences between virtual reality and flat panel. Now, one thing I want to say is both of them can be useful. I'm not trying to bash on flat panel instruction or flat panel simulation. Both of them can be good, right? Flat panel, the student watches a screen. They get a good understanding of concepts and procedures. Virtual reality, the student is actually inside the environment. So especially for someone who has some motor planing issues, it's really important that you try and immerse them as closely as possible, I think, because the physical response that they make, is helpful to them in the simulation process. And the decisions, I think, feel a little bit more immediate when you're in virtual reality than when you're in the flat panel simulation. Both of them are good, but again, what we want to keep in mind when we're talking about virtual reality or any kind of simulation is that the quality of the simulation isn't the goal, right? It's transferring the practice, what they're doing, getting that transferable to in-car driving. That's the goal. And frankly, that's one of the reasons why I prefer virtual reality. But we just keep in mind, as good as we make the simulation, the goal has got to be getting in the car. Now, for our training, the class size is always one. So our program, we start everyone at the exact same place, right? They're alone. There's no other traffic in the world. There are no people running around, and we can focus on car control. We focus on how they steer, how to control the pedals, how to maintain their lane position, right? And then we slowly increase the complexity by adding in pedestrians and traffic. And then we'll ratchet the pressure up more by adding in, weather, night conditions, things that are unexpected to them. And then when they demonstrate a level of readiness, we hand them off to the in-car driving programs. Now, what I like to say is every one of my clients start at the same place. Every one of my clients end at the same place. But every single one of my clients, the path that they take is going to be different, right? The class size is always one. So we always have to just look at what is the right timing for this client to move through that path. So it's really important, I think, to individualize your approach and to build a proficiency based program. So when it's proficiency based, we're not looking at, and this is such a different mindset that I had when I had a full service. Columbia River Driver Education was a full service driver education company, right? We taught high schoolers how to drive, and there, by rules, we had certain amount of classroom time they had to do, certain amount of in-car time they had to do, certain amount of observation time they were supposed to do. Everything was based on seat time and making sure that every client got through the amount of seat time. And, one of the things that I love about our virtual reality program is seat time is the least important thing that we do. It's all about proficiency. I have some clients who, master car control in their second session. Well, why would I keep them in car control any longer? I have some clients where it may be, session 6 or 7, and they haven't mastered car control. Why would I move them to something else when they clearly haven't demonstrated that they're ready? So what we want to do is we want to evaluate that client's skill. But one of the things that's important with the clients that we serve, right? And ASD Drive Ready serves people with autism, ADHD, and anxiety. We don't want to just have our instructors looking at skill. We want them looking at the client. So we want them to be correct in what they're doing, consistent in what they're doing, and stable. But just because they did something correctly doesn't mean that it's time to move them forward, right? They may have done it correctly, but not have any capacity left over, right? We want to be monitoring their capacity as well. How much of a cognitive load did that put on them? Are they, they were able to do it correctly, but they're clearly overloaded. That means they haven't reached proficiency. We want to make sure that they're able to perform it correctly, and they still have the capacity, enough capacity left over to continue driving, to continue scanning, to continue doing all of the other things that they need to be doing while they're driving. So we believe it's important when we're training our instructors to teach them to monitor not only the screen, but the student. And sometimes they're probably monitoring the student more than they're monitoring the screen, right? It really is important to multitask. And that's why I say that instructor has got to be a skilled craftsman. They're not just in there to select the correct program at the correct time. They're there to participate. They're an active participant in the training of the client. Now, in my mind, the ideal instructor has a whole lot of things going on, right? They need to have a lot of patience, and it's unusual for me to say that one because I get told two different things. From my clients, I'm told that I have, the patience of Job. And from my children, I'm told that I'm the most impatient person in the world. So I'm not sure where I actually lie in there, but I think a quality instructor has a lot of patience. You have to have a depth of driver education knowledge, I think. And especially with our client base, I think it's really important. I think it's important with everyone, but I think it's especially true with our client base because sometimes your favorite explanation is just not going to work. It's not just going to land. So after you try explanation A, you need to have B, C, D, you need to have 4 or 5 or 6 ways of explaining the exact same concept. And it's our job as instructors, right? Instruction occurs when the knowledge is actually transferred. And if you're an instructor, your job is to get that knowledge transferred to the client. And so, if your first way or second way or fourth way didn't work, your job is to come up with that fifth, sixth, and seventh until you get to a point where the client understands and the client can demonstrate that they understand it. So you've got to be very aware of whether or not they're overloaded, and you've got to have the ability to really watch the learner, because sometimes the best thing you can do is, is be quiet. Sometimes the client is getting close to overload, and they may still be making mistakes, but we'll be able to fix those mistakes better next time. Because if we go any further right now with our instruction, we're going to push them over the edge. And so let's instead back off and let them end their session on a successful note. So you have to have that ability to watch them and to be aware of when they're going to overload. Now, we always start with evaluations of the client. And the one thing that I'd like to say is that the evaluation begins, even though we're a driving simulation program, right? The evaluation begins well before the client puts the headset on. To me, the evaluation begins when we say hello, when I'm greeting them and they're walking into the room. That's when the evaluation starts. We're evaluating them like when we start talking to them and asking them about their driving experience or where they're at. Who's answering the question? Is the client answering the question, or is the parent answering the question? When we're talking to them, are they looking at us, or are they looking towards their parent to jump in? That's going to help tell us how close to independent operation the client already is. During the evaluation, during the driving process, we're evaluating, we're looking at motor skills, we're looking at how well they're processing instruction, both from the program and from us. And then after the, at the end of the program, or at the end of the evaluation, we're able to make a good recommendation. But even there, when we start asking questions like whether or not they have any questions, or what they thought, or what they want us to do in terms of sending them emails afterwards or scheduling more stuff, who's responding and how are they responding? Did they get exhausted from, do they look different than they did when they came in? Those are all things that will go into our evaluation. And so the good instructor, when they're doing their evaluation process, they're doing all of those things. Now, one of the things that I frequently get asked is, well, you're bringing them in, you're doing these things. How do you know that the program's been successful? And I like to tell people that I don't necessarily know what success looks like with our clients, but I know what it sounds like. It sounds like silence. When the client is able to perform, we're having brief conversations before the scenario, where I'm talking about what they're going to be encountering during the scenario, when I'm kind of pre-briefing them. I'm not giving them very much coaching. They're driving through the process. They're doing the drive. Their breathing's normal. Their hands are relaxed. They're scanning and doing things independently. And frankly, sometimes when they're responding, any of you who already have SANDI knows that Every now and then the AI vehicles may crash, or one of the drivers may do something that's not the correct thing to do. When you start seeing success, you're going to see your clients, not only are they not getting upset by that, but they're starting to sound like regular drivers because they are making fun of what they're seeing. Can you believe what that car just did? Can you believe what that guy just did? So as the instructor, you're not coaching as much. They're just driving, and there are these periods of silence during your session. That's success. That's what we're kind of looking for. Now, I do think it's really important to talk about how we do the handoff. So when we get done, we're just do the simulation portion. We have driving schools that we will recommend the clients go to when when they leave us. So I think it's important that the instructors from ASD Drive Ready and the instructors from whatever school we're sending them to, Florida Safety Council or whoever, we we compile all of our student notes, send them over. We get emails back and forth or phone call back and forth. We talk about the skills that our clients have already demonstrated, what we found have been effective for coaching, how we like to communicate, what we see as signs of overload or stress from the student. And then we typically recommend the first drive. This is what I would do on the first drive with them in car. Now, I don't recommend beyond the first car because those are all professional instructors as well, right? So they know how to handle the in-car portion, but I want to give them an idea of, hey, this is what I think, where I think the client is, how I think they should respond, where you should start at. And I think that partnership allows our clients to move forward. They don't have to start over in the beginning, although we typically recommend that their first drive start in a parking lot, where they can demonstrate car control with the actual car. And we have them repeat a lot of the things that we do inside the simulator. But we want to make sure that the instructor starts with a head start on how that client responds. Okay. Now, one of the things that I do want to talk about is how we kind of built that community demand in our area. So first, we reached out to everybody. So we reached out to the card centers. We reached out to all the private organizations, the nonprofits that are on Facebook or on Instagram in the area, to let them know what we had and that we were planning on going to that area. We looked for opportunities to table where we could bring the equipment, set it up, and let people drive in it for, short periods of time. The demonstration, the actual using it kind of builds the demand. We set up, when we started in Orlando, we set up a week where we did nothing but evaluations. We called it Evaluation Week with Card. And then we worked out a discount for everybody who was registered through the Center for Autism Related Disabilities. They got a discount code, a coupon code, and they could sign up for a discounted evaluation. We use that to create our individualized, recommendations for the clients. And then we started training. And essentially, since we've repeated that model in every region that we've moved to, and it's turned out to be, really successful. As far as action plans that I would recommend people who are thinking about starting with SANDI, I would say the first thing you want to do is, map the community. Find that area, however big you want your service area to be. Go out and find everybody in that area that would be a client or could be a client. Find all of them and talk to all of them. The second thing I would say is make sure you build confidence. So make sure you really dive in on your driver education knowledge and your knowledge of how the simulator works. And then the third part is make sure that you have a process in place. Like, you know where you want clients to start. You know how you're going to move them along. You've got whatever metrics you're going to use to say, okay, that demonstrates competency at this level. So now I'm going to move them to this level. This is when I'm going to move them from here to here. Or, this is when I'm going to move them from driving in the rural scenarios to driving in the urban scenarios, to use the SANDI scenarios. So make sure that you have a defined process and a defined path in place, so that you're not trying to develop your program on the fly. Make sure you know what you're going to do. So I guess in my opinion here, these are the things that you need, right? To have a successful program, you need that professional tool. You need an instructor, the path, the community, and you need to know where you're going, that meaningful destination. But all of those things together creates the system or the business. And if you don't have those, if when you're missing those, your business is going to be missing something. So finally, I just say, this is a program that can change lives. Here's my information. And I think now, Jan, I'd be ready to take some questions.
Thank you so much, Rich. That was amazing. And what I noted here alongside the questions was like, silence is success while driving with SANDI, or silence indicates that you do good. So this is something that I will maybe quote or steal from you for a quote.
Oh,
This
could
is
I?
really good.
Is
Again.
it okay? I'll say a quick thing. Could I also borrow the simulator as a bridge, because that could go really well how I describe it, because I feel like that is like correct, especially having driven to the simulator over in Massachusetts of Deb, and tried that out with Deb. Like that was exactly right as I tried the 2D, the flat version. I have to get used to that. The flat version of the simulator. Okay, moving on.
Thank you, Andrew. So we just got a question that could you please show again your contact information? Although we will
Oh,
send this out to all the registered participants, but if you can just put it in again.
sure.
Yeah, we can leave this on if you so will. So that's perfect. I had some questions noted here, and I tried to make sense of it. So I think what a lot of our or this audience would like to know, and in general, and also I've been asked this quite a lot, and so I always defer to let's say customers who already have SANDI. But in this case, I would like to know if you can talk a little bit about the pricing, the structure, the increments, and the packages, because I think that's very important for driving schools, but other organizations would like to implement SANDI. How do they, if so, charge for it? How long is 1 hour? And how long is 1 hour? That's stupid. I'm so sorry. How long is one session? Is it an hour or less? And do you have packages? And if so, what kind of packages are you offering?
Sure. So we base so our sessions are 45 minutes long. We give the instructor 15 minutes to write up the session. So we bill based on an hour, but the sessions themselves with the client is 45 minutes. So the client gets 45 minutes, the instructor gets 15 minutes of their own time in that hour that we use. So our hourly rate, I started basing those on our first area. And what I did was I kind of looked at what traditional driver education programs charge for an hour of in-car experience. And and I wanted to get below that. So that's kind of where I started at. But then because we travel, our program, as I mentioned, we're basically from, Orlando north to Georgia and all the way west to Alabama, Mississippi. Um, because we travel, we took that base rate and then just calculated how much would the travel cost it add to it. So essentially, we make that base everywhere, and our base rate started at about $75 an hour. I think I'd have to actually look at my website right now, but I think we average about 85 to $90 an hour is about our average. And the Panhandle region, which is our longest trip, is our most expensive area. I think we charge 115 an hour out there. I do have packages where I think we do, like, if you buy a 10 session package, we reduce the price by $50. And if you buy a 20 session package, we reduce it by $100, right? So $50 per 10 sessions. And our most popular package is the 10 session package. What we do is even if a client, even if at the end of the evaluation, if I say, hey, I think you're going to be, 20 or 40 sessions, what we recommend that they do is just go in 10 session increments. So, I guess I could try and sell them, hey, pay up front one big price and get 40 sessions. But what I want to see is at the end of each 10 sessions, especially for those clients who it's going to be a longer period of time, and we know it's going to be a longer period of time, every 10 sessions, I feel like we should reevaluate whether or not we're making the same amount of progress. And so we kind of recommend do 10. The end of 10, let's take a look and let's make sure that you still want to go down that journey. Because some of our clients, sadly, we'll have some clients that we know it's going to be a really long time. And one of the things that we tell them all at the end of their evaluation, no matter, where they fit in the program, is, we're not sure that at the end of this, we're going to recommend that you go to get in car and start driving. And so I'd rather not have somebody put their hopes in and purchase, 40 sessions. And then we get to session 40 and I'm going, yeah, sorry, I can't recommend that you go in car driving. So we like to do 10. I'm sorry, I went a little bit too long there, Jan, but
No, it's fine. It's fine. But we have more questions coming. So, for example, we have, and I already answered this, but I want also you to confirm it. So we have a question coming in that says, so this SANDI driver readiness platform was originally designed for autistic individuals. Yes, because traditional driver's education failed miserably, but it is also ideal for it's for timid and unexperienced, so basically for everybody else. Would you say that is true, or is it only designed for no, it's basically working for everybody else, which is awesome. I just may say that the traditional rail doesn't work for a specific group, but now we created something for a specific audience and it works for everybody else, which is amazing. But if you want to add to this, then please.
Yeah. So I would say probably 10 to 20% of our clients don't have, aren't on the spectrum. They have high anxiety around driving, and it's good for moving them through that anxiety if you're able to see all of these different situations and see that you can successfully handle those. Your anxiety level naturally reduces. If you've I don't think it matters what the danger that you perceive is. If you're around it enough, you feel more safe in that. And yeah, I think it's a great program. And Jan is exactly correct. If I was king for a day, everybody who was learning to drive would learn to drive using a simulator, right? You would start in the simulator, build your proficiency, and then move to the car. It wouldn't matter to me whether you were on the spectrum or not. If you're neurotypical, I still think, you're better off. In fact, I mentioned that we started with simulators in 2019 of virtual reality, 2019 in my traditional driver education program because I wanted to improve my neurotypical teens' abilities so that when they got in the car the first time, they were so much farther ahead. We were able to get more in our amount of time that we had in the car once we implemented virtual reality as part of our training than we were beforehand. It helps everyone.
Which is correct. And I have another add on to this. So towards the session and the packages. So what is the average number of sessions for a standard learner? Let's say a neurotypical. And what is the average for a neurodivergent? Where is the difference in that? Do you have idea?
I don't think I could answer that question. We tailor our program to every single individual. And so even people that have, that come in that have anxiety. So I don't have any clients that are totally neurotypical. I guess I should start with that. I don't anymore have any clients that are totally neurotypical. I did at Columbia River Driver Education. We built in every one of our clients there did 4 hours of virtual reality training as part of our training pipeline. It was just built into our curriculum there, and that seemed to work just fine. At ASD Drive Ready, I don't have any neurotypical, students that I know of, because I think even the anxiety could be some signs of neurodiversity. But the clients with anxiety have different levels of anxiety, right? So some of those clients with anxiety, after 10 sessions, they're like, oh, I get it now. I feel really comfortable. I'm going to go, I'm going to go driving soon. And they actually start to get anxious. You can tell that they're getting really comfortable when they're constantly checking how many more sessions do you think I'm going to need? How many more sessions? Because I'm ready to go drive, right? And we'll start seeing that, session 7 or 8. We actually, with students that are moving through it at that rate, we'll start working in driving skill test training for them so that they're ready to take the Florida driving skills test fairly soon after they get in car. But I don't think I could peg an average number. Most of our clients do, I would say, 10 to 15 sessions. Most of our clients fit in there.
Interesting. Thank you. We have more coming, so I'm just continue asking questions. And if you don't feel comfortable, because we just got a question from Jimmy, who is eager to become a SANDI driving instructor, and he's asking, what is the typical pay for an... Oh, there's someone new, just ruined my line here. What is the typical pay for an instructor, and how many hours do they work per week? If you can say something for us.
So I don't know about in Tennessee, Jimmy. I think you'd be more interested in Tennessee, but I don't know that I'd be comfortable saying.
Yeah, that's why I'm saying this. Maybe you should talk to him in private.
Yeah,
talk to him.
Jimmy, I'll be more than happy to talk to you in private about that. But I don't want to upset Jen by saying what I pay her over the World Wide Web.
Yeah, no, Jimmy, please understand that is something that you should ask him directly, which you can. But we have a new question here. Also, can you describe what is the level of competency? So what does this mean? Can you say some things about that? You were talking about competency. Can you talk a little bit about what does this mean, the level of competency?
Can I clarify the question?
Yes, please.
This is Deb. Thank you. During Rich, while you were talking about your programs and how you move students through, once they get comfortable and stable at a certain point. You called it levels of competency, and I was wondering what you meant by that and what that looks like in your program.
So, for example, in our program, we have an area where we use more than one software system, and in one of them is a large parking lot, and we have the students making right and left turns, right? So we would have the student do that until they got to a level where they're able to execute that well before we would move them to, the next skill set, which would be driving through a small community. In the SANDI universe, I would say before we introduce traffic, we're wanting to make sure that the client is able to drive through the, they're the three different rural scenarios, right? And rural, the third one has traffic patterns in it, has traffic in it, right? We want to make sure that the client is able to move through the second rural system, make all of those turns successfully where they're not cutting into the oncoming traffic lane, they're not driving over onto the sidewalk. They're able to execute all of those maneuvers successfully. They're able to maintain their speed. They're stopping at the correct stopping point. All of those things before we introduce traffic, right? So the competency actually there, and SANDI is excellent for this, is you'll notice in that second one, there's not traffic yet, but there are a bunch of pedestrians. Well, if the pedestrians are, bothering the client to the point where they're not able to successfully drive, then we need to have them drive around pedestrians more before we move cars into the scenario or to the equation. I hope that makes sense. You want to, every single time we put the clients in a drive, we have a goal set in mind for what they're going to be able to do to successfully complete that drive, or success for us, the success criteria.
Yep, that's helpful. Thank you.
All right, I call out Guy because he had also a question, and please, Guy, you can ask the question. No, he's shy. Okay.
So I've had several conversations with Guy. I don't think he's shy.
So he says something like, what is the frequency and the duration of lessons? But I think you already mentioned this. Time between lessons, and do you recommend more than an hour in duration?
So great questions there. So for our program, I think 1 to 2 sessions per week is optimal. Unfortunately, I'm not able to get every client through at that pacing, but I think that's optimal. I think that for the vast majority of my clients, the 1 hour session is about the limit of effectiveness. Now, I will say I do have a single client that has some additional physical issues that, and they asked if they could book two sessions back to back, and they're the only client that I have do that. But I think after 45 minutes in virtual reality, I think we reach a point of diminishing returns on the training effectiveness. And with that one client, what I end up doing is he still only drives, he still only spends about 45 minutes, even though he does back-to-back sessions, in the headset. The in-between training is more training, more like traditional classroom one-on-one type tutoring, on the situations. And so for some clients, I would go more than an hour, but I wouldn't do more than an hour in virtual reality at a sitting, if that makes sense.
Thank you. And in respect of all our times, and especially yours, Rich, I have two more questions. One I want to read to you, and maybe then you can, in this regard, explain a little bit about your curriculum and your, let's say, service that you provide to other instructors and driving schools when implementing SANDI. So when you describe recommending your instructor have driver education knowledge, what training are you recommending? Are you recommending training with ADED or ETSI?
So both ADED and ATSIA are excellent organizations. And if you get training from them, especially if you go to the conference, Jan and I are going to be at the ADED conference coming up. We were just at the ATSIA national conference. There's great training there. That's great resource to go to for training. I went through instructor training in Oregon. I went through the initial instructor training there. And I go to just about as many conferences as I can put, on my schedule. I try and go both to get and to give training to people. I think that's a great place. If you have the opportunity to go through any continuing training in your state, I would do that. Now, we provide specific training as well. But, it's interesting, I've got Jen is here with me, our newest employee. And, one of the things that I did that we've talked about as far as her training is I don't want her to just get her training from me. She'll get training about the ASD Drive method from me. She'll get training about what I think from me. But, I want her to go to these other places to get a different perspective. Because again, you need to have 5 and 6 different ways of explaining the same thing. We had a conversation earlier today where I was just trying to explain follow time to a client a week ago, and it took multiple different ways of doing it, multiple different handouts, whiteboards, walking, different demonstrations that we could do to get that whole, this is how this is the follow time that's preferred. This is how you calculate whether or not your follow time is correct. And to get it to the point where the client was like, oh, okay, I get it now. This is what I'm doing. And they were able to give me the correct answer over and over and over again. So you just need to have a wealth of things in your bag, but go to as many places as you can to get good training.
Absolutely. And I might add that also Mary from San Diego State University is here, and they created a program called STEER, which was designed and developed alongside the development of SANDI. So we have STEER, which is based in San Diego, and we have your curriculum. So it starts getting an ecosystem around SANDI on so many ways. So it's dependent on if you are a driving school or if you're a nonprofit organization which has no driving school instructor kind of experience. So we have a lot to give to organizations who would first time implement SANDI into their program. So we have all the support that we need and beyond. And yeah, with that, oh, one more question. So I remember that you said at some point you're handing over with an, let's say, letter of, what is it called? A letter of recommendation of about the students that you have. Did you get a feedback back at some point? Did the driving schools get you the feedback? Yes, your student has passed the test. Do you have also that?
Yeah. So we're actually trying to gather survey both the clients who have completed the program and the drive school. I have gotten response back from the school. They didn't give me a response in terms of numbers, but they did give me a response in terms of what they what they felt about our clients. And the two things that really kind of jumped out at me was one, the top line comment from all of their instructors that came back. The number one comment was, we, if you hadn't told us going in that these were your clients, we would not have necessarily associated them with your program because they came in with confidence and capability. And so that was interesting. And then the other thing that really jumped out at me is Florida Safety Council, as part of their normal driving protocol, during their first driving lesson, they administer the Florida driving skills test, basically so they can get a before and after, right? So it's kind of a pre. These are the 5 skills that you'll have to do to get your license, and then later on they get a post. And their comment was, all of our clients, all of the clients that we sent them, actually passed the driving skills test on the pre. So that they thought that was an unusually high level of skill for new drivers.
That's a good, let's say, way to conclude this webinar with a positive, let's say, answer to this. And yeah, I would say thank you so much, Rich, for taking the time, sharing your wisdom and your knowledge with us. And your contact is still here seen. So if any of you participants would like to reach out to Rich, please do so. Ask him more questions that we can ever hear answer. And of course, you can always reach out to me. And I would say thank you. And with that, I conclude this session officially.